is financial literacy. And so we have partnered with these agencies to provide training on energy efficiency and energy consumption. So that helps to balance the customer's budget along with their expenditures. We posted on social media with the request from RealSense that there's an opportunity for free tax filing, financial education courses, et cetera. And they were extraordinarily pleased that we were able to do that and support them in that way. And then lastly, poverty elimination partnerships. Are any of you familiar with the 1,000 and 1,000 program? You are?
I am.
Okay. It's removing 1,000 people from poverty in
1,000
days.
days.
Exactly. Well, the component that we're engaged in is the financial literacy component. It's one of the 9 tenets to improve.
Community, so thank you for that report.
Here, here.
All right, do we have any comments from the public today? Seeing none, we'll move on to Councilman Bishop, who unfortunately could not join us this afternoon. And next we'll have the consent agenda. There are 2 action items on the consent agenda: the adoption of the board meeting minutes and the authorization for board member education and development. The remaining items are for information only. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. And next we have our strategic discussions. And Steve McEnall, Director of Electric Production Resource Planning.
I was going to have a little more time, but you went through those last couple items pretty quickly.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, the 10-year site plan is produced annually. It's a report that goes to the Public Service Commission and the Florida Reliability Coordinating Council. They take 10-year site plans from all the utilities in the state and compile the data and review it and make sure that the entire state has adequate resources to meet the state's demand. So, in the 10-year site plan, we look at the facilities that we have, existing and committed facilities, additions, our forecast, any planning assumptions. That includes demand-side management, energy efficiency, plug-in electric vehicles. And this year, we do have the Clean Power Plan looming out there. There's supposed to be a final in the summertime. Nothing in this year's 10-year site plan reflects any modifications that may be required for that proposed plan. We'll be working on reports and studies as that's finalized to determine what we need to do there. And this is a variation of something that you've see pretty often. This is our forecast and also historical. As you see, JEA experienced a decline starting in 2007 and then a recovery starting in 12. But what we our fleet was kind of designed for the slope. If you look at the far left of the graph, the slope that we had there, we were growing at about 3% a year prior to 2007. Now that we're in a slow recovery, it's about 0.8%. So it's a much slower. It's essentially flat for all intents and purposes, but there is some slight growth. The green line is our energy. That's against the axis on the right, and the blue and red lines are our winter and summer peaks. Our winter peak is a little bit higher, but most of the revenue for the utility comes during the summertime with the wider and steadier peaks. With Northside 3's reserve storage, we've made a big step towards, if you would, right-sizing our fleet. Our goal is to keep a 15% reserve margin, and that's in order to participate in the emergency power planning pool. The IRU is required to keep 20%. So we're just there now with Northside 3 and reserve storage for the next 3 years, and then our capacity increases again in the 2019-2020 timeframe as Vogtle 3 and 4 come on, and our power park purchase power is returned from Florida Power and Light. The yellow dots along the top are our system-wide capacity factor, so that's our total available generation with how much we actually use, so that accounts for all the reserve. So this is kind of a couple of summary slides. This is what the capacity and energy looked like in 2014, being the last prior year, and 10 years in the future. Significantly, we're still very solid fuel dependent, so we have a lot riding on what the Clean Power Plan looks like, is kind of the message you get there. Usually in 2014, our natural gas usage is higher. When the projections run out 10 years, the natural gas always ends up being a little less favorable than the coal projections, just because it's more volatile, and the coal projections are pretty stable. And lastly, here's what's coming in and going off. We added 6 megawatts of the landfill gas in February, and we're planning to take off the Northside 3. Had a few seasonal purchases that we would have to do, and then just contracts expiring, and finally Vogtle and Power Park coming back in towards the tail end of the study period. And with 20 seconds left, that's it. Any questions?
I had a question about, in 2019, you show a big jump in capacity. Part of it's the nuclear power coming on board, but that sale to the St. Johns River Power Park to FP&L, do you anticipate all of that's going back, or is it, could part of that be retained depending on the need?
Yeah, what that's based on is our agreement, our contract with Florida Power and Light. There's a bond limit where we own 80% of the power park, they own 20%, we sell 30% to them, but we base it on the projections. When they reach a certain level of megawatt hours that they've taken, it has to revert back to us, and that's a bond limitation. It may stretch out into the further if they don't take as much power as our projections show, so it could go to 2020, 2021. Certainly by 2021, 2022, at the end of the contract period, we'd get that power back. So there is some flexibility there, but our current forecast showed in 2019.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't go to them, it comes to us.
Yeah, it comes back to us.
And I would add, we have to take it, and then we're prevented from selling it back to them during that period of time until all of the bonds, original bonds, are paid for. And the last one is in 2022. So as long as those bonds are outstanding, they'll hit a point where they can no longer take power. If we were to pay off the bonds, then we do more open market. So there is a longer-term strategy we'll evaluate down the road.
And those bonds, I assume, are callable before 22? 2022?
2022, so yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Steve? Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
And now we'll have our bi-monthly operations presentation. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, board members. And I'm up first this month for the operations report data through February 28th. I'll be followed by Renetta Marshall, who's filling in for Brian Roach this week. Brian is on vacation, taking advantage of spring break, so he's off with the family. And then Monica Whiting will finish us up. As always, we start with safety. We continue to have a good year this year. We're at a year-to-date recordable incident rate of 1.44. That's significantly better than last year, and in fact, it's better than any of our prior 6 years of performance. So we are doing well. We're not down at 1.2, which is the goal for our company this year, but 1.44 does represent a very good start through 5 months. That's 12 recordables year to date. 8 of those are actually in my area. The other 4 are in Brian's area. I think it's significant that we've had 0 throughout the rest of the company. So hats off to Monica and Melissa and the other senior leadership team members for going 0 year to date through 5 months. The 12 compares to 18 this time last year, so we're 6 better than last year. 5 of the 12 were lost time, but honestly not all that serious. We've had a lot of strains and sore backs and muscle issues, a couple of hand injuries, nothing super serious, but 12 recordables nonetheless. We continue to focus on senior leadership, visible leadership. We have a new program being led by safety called Planning for Zero. Continue to push some of our prior programs such as the Safety Passport Program and a PASS recognition program. And we continue to focus on preventing severe injuries and lost time incidents. So doing well there, more to come. We're not at 1.2 yet. Continue to strive for that goal for the year. Moving on to the performance objectives for the electric system, the T&D system. As we've discussed in the past, we've done a very good job over the last 5 to 6 years reducing outage frequency and duration, and have moved into, for the past 2 to 3 years, a period of stable maintaining that performance in terms of outage frequency, outage duration. The transmission line performance is solid. All of those are in line with the targets for the year, in line with locking in the prior couple of years of improvement. The typical JEA customer sees 1.7 outages a year and a total accumulated outage duration of just under 90 minutes, an hour and a half. Those numbers are in line with our peers in the industry. Those are either top quartile, depending on which one you're looking at, or at least in the middle of the pack. Our strategic initiative that we have going on, we have focused in on this semi-5 metric. We've talked about that in the past. That supports, of course, earning customer loyalty and delivering business excellence. It's a new metric for us. It represents the hot spots in the area, represents the number of customers who have seen more than 5 outages in the last 12 months. We currently stand at 2.5, or corresponds to just over 11,000 customers, and we are hard at work getting that down. It's noteworthy that about a year ago, January of 14, we were at 3.45, 3.5. Brought that down nicely over about a 12-year period, bottomed out last summer at around 2.0. Since then, due largely to weather, some storms that we had through the late summer and the fall, that number has crept back up despite our efforts at continuing to do projects to run it down. Beaten by the weather. This past month, it did, after several months of basically being flat, it did come down a bit, down to 2.5. Our goal for the year is 1.5. Our ultimate goal to be top quartile amongst our peers is 1%. So we've got a ways to go to get down there, and that's the driver for 2016. The generating units are performing well. The fleet's performing well. Year to date, we're at a 2.4% forced outage rate. The CFBs at Northside 1 and 2 are at the high end, having some issues with those units, but 4% is not too bad. 2.5% is top quartile, and really in line with our performance over the last 4 years, averaging out around 2.5%, 3%, and substantially better than where we were in the 08 to 9 and 2010 timeframe. Had a couple of good outages last fall, planned outages. Unplanned outages aren't good. Planned outages are for maintenance. On Northside 1 and 2 and the Brandy Branch combined cycle unit, we are in the middle of a major outage at SGRPP on Unit 1. It's a 70-day outage, 2 months plus. We have the steam turbine torn apart. We have the generator torn apart. If you'd like to get a hands-on view of a dissected generator being major overhaul, let us know and we'll line you up for a trip. And you've got until in first week of May to get that scheduled. Yes, sir.
I was just going to highly recommend that
Yeah.
for board members that haven't seen that. It's really cool to get inside and see the unit, see the work that's being done out there.
It's very important. Last spring, we found some cracks in the steam turbine on the other unit, added cost and delays to the outage. We had planned on seeing the same thing on the sister unit this spring. We did not see that, so that's good news. You never know about turbines and 20-year turbines, how they're going to age. We do have a small issue with the field on the rotor, so anytime you go into these units, you never know what you're going to find. But all in all, a very good project thus far. Also doing some major controls replacement. It's 1980s vintage technology, so we're doing a lot of upgrade on the control systems. So all good there. Environmental compliance, we're defect-free this year. We've had no reportable events. Each year we have around 3 or 4, usually not significant events, wastewater spills, stuff doesn't go where it's supposed to go. We work really hard on air permits above and beyond all else. So that history of reportable events is wastewater management, a small fuel spill, something not too serious, and no air events, but we've had 0 year to date, so we're off to a good start this year on the environmental side at our power plants. You have seen this chart in other presentations. Decline in unit sales over the last decade, about 1% year over year. And although in the last 2 years it's picked up, so we've bottomed out in 12 and 13, come back up last year, and this year forecasted to be at 12.2 million megawatt hours. A lot of that is weather, and you can see the degree days, year-to-date degree days down in the lower left-hand corner. But pretty good year this year, year over year. Through 5 months, 4 of the 5 months, we're ahead of last year's unit sales, and we're only short in January. 2.7 year to date, ahead of last year, and we're forecasting a 0.4% increase in unit sales, end up at 12.2. And you can see how that 2.7 year to date is broken out. A lot of it is in the residential area, and then a big chunk of that is the interruptible customers.
You know, this does seem to be showing some cyclical effects, some economically sensitive effects.
Yeah.
Last 2 years have certainly been better for Jacksonville.
It has been. We are seeing a significant increase in growth in new services and developments and businesses.
Well,
Of course, it's a lot of things overlaid. It's the weather, it's the economy, it's energy efficiency, it's,
You know, you can't tease everything out of here, but
Right.
there definitely does seem to be some business improvement.
something we continue to watch closely. On the financials, on revenue, we are currently forecasting to be 25 million under budget and about 18 million under on total revenues for comparing 15 to 14 year over year. That is driven by, we have rolled into this the expected $50 million fuel credit. So that's what's causing the negative variances. You recall we had 26 million last year, we've got 50 layered in. So it's that first line that's giving you the negative variance against budget and year over year. Fuel expense, you can see very clearly in the fuel expense line, we are 45 million favorable year over year. We're 47 million favorable to budget, and that's what's supportive, of course, of the refunding. We plan to transfer into the fuel fund at year end 19.7 million. O&M expenses, 205 forecasted, up a bit over last year, but under budget, and that was part of the plan this year. The opposite story on non-fuel purchase power, which is SGRPP and plant share, they are, that one is down 85 million year over year, and that is due to less debt service, and that was part of the plan and the schedule for debt service for those, in particular SGRPP. So that was a planned and known reduction coming into the year. Both capital expenditures and debt service are up year over year. You will recall we had a very light year, an unusually light year on capital in fiscal 14 at 86 million, extremely low, just a light, not a lot going on. We ran the budget up this year to 129 as our approved spending plan for capital, and we're currently projecting it at 118. Financial metrics are solid, debt service coverage, plan to pay off over 200 million in electric system debt this year, dropping the debt to asset ratio from 74 to 72. Looking at our electric costs per megawatt hour, the target is $54.73, forecasting to be 366 under that, so good there. And then a nice summary in the lower right-hand corner of the fuel fund. Started the year at 105. We had in the budget about a 13 million surplus, so we kind of knew going in, we thought we'd be 13 plus. At this point, we're projecting 70 to the good. It's moved that much in the 5 months through the fiscal year, almost exclusively due to natural gas prices being better than budget, solid fuel prices being low and stable, and we've been able to capture that and take advantage of it. Even with the 50 refunding, assuming the board approves that, we've got an ending balance of 125 million. And just briefly, this is where we stack up in terms of the rates, residential rates. Customers at 1,000 kilowatt hours, we're right in the middle. Gainesville, Gulf Power on the high side, followed by Duke Energy, Florida, Miami on the other end. And that covers the electric operations report. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks,
Renetta?
Renetta.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As Mike mentioned, I'll be doing the report. I'm doing the report on behalf of Brian Roche, who's on a well-deserved vacation. Okay, we're going to start out with our metrics that are related to system reliability and customer service. And basically, water wastewater has 3 primary metrics in this area. The first one is unplanned water outages. As Mike mentioned, unplanned water outages are not good. Looking at the graph on the top left-hand side, we were doing pretty good for the first 3 months. Our goal is to have less than 375 customers impacted with outages per month. First 3 months were good, and we experienced some challenges for the month of January and February, where we had water main breaks in the Marietta area, and this caused us to have over 500 customers during the month of January and about 900 customers during the month of February be subjected to outages. This part of our system is an older part of our system where the water mains are in excess of 50 and 60 years old. What exacerbated that break as far as the number of customers being out was that this was not a loop system. So therefore, since that time, Our forces have went in, have looped the system. We also put in isolation valves to mitigate the number of customers that would be out if another break should occur. And in addition to that, we have added this area to our capital plan as far as the rehab and rehabilitation, and we're looking at replacing some mains this spring. Okay. The next area is pressure in the water distribution system. That is the graph on the upper right-hand side, and that is related to system pressure. We have about 101 monitors in the system where we measure the system pressure in the area, and anytime it goes less than 30 psi, we make note of that. Unlike the previous metric, this isn't an outage, but it's more related to less than adequate pressure. And we, as you can see, we are trending down, so that metric is looking good. The last is customer response time. And as we look at customer response time, this is, again, trending in the right direction. The graph here is for the last 7 fiscal years. We started out with an average response time about 102 minutes in fiscal year 2009. In our current fiscal year, we are projecting 69 minutes, or just a little over an hour. That's a reduction of about 32%. And that is the time that it takes for our first responder to resolve an issue or transfer to a field crew. So that we're looking steady, we're holding steady, and that metric is going in the right direction. Okay. These next 3 metrics are related to environmental compliance. We have our current consumptive use permit, total nitrogen to the river, and finally sanitary sewer overflows. If you look at the graph to the upper left there, that is our consumptive use permit, better known as our CUP. In that CUP, there are 44 conditions, and included in those is the amount of water that we can withdraw from the aquifer. Our target for this current fiscal year is 129 million gallons per day. We are on course for meeting that goal with a year-to-date about 92 million gallons. Our challenge, which has been brought before the board before, is managing the South Grid allocation, where we have seen restrictions over the last 3 years. This has been decreasing, and our current allocation for South Grid is about 60 million gallons per day. Key to meeting that goal is increasing the amount of reuse on the South Grid. Turning towards total nitrogen to the river, that's the upper right-hand graph. For the last 10 years, you see how we have decreased the total nitrogen. This total limit is set by the Department of Environmental Protection. For this year, our goal is 720 tons. That is what DEP has set. Our internal goal is to beat that with 650 tons. Last year, we were at 577. Year to date, about 232, so we are on target for meeting the goal of 650. The last in this area is sanitary sewer overflows, SSOs. A lot of work has gone into meeting this metric. The average for the last 7 fiscal years has been 31 SSOs. Our goal this year is 30. We're on track for meeting this goal with year to date, and matter of fact, doing very well of 6 SSOs. And I think it's worthy to note that while the number has reduced by almost 60%, the volume has reduced about 90%. Okay, I'm going to turn now towards financial metrics. Looking at this slide right here, this is sales, 1,000 gallons of sales. Our budget for this fiscal year was based on 33 billion gallons of water sales. Year to date, we are exceeding. We're at 5.3% greater than fiscal year 14, and by the end of the year, we're forecasting 2.4% greater. Of course, as Mike had mentioned, one of the drivers or influencers in this goal is weather, and for water sewer, that's rainfall. If you look at the box on the bottom left of the slide, you'll note that we are slightly higher when it comes to inches of rainfall, about 1 inch. We're less in the number of days. So 43 days last year, year to date, compared to 30 days this year, so about 30% lower. And if you look at the bottom right of the slide, you'll note that corresponding to less rainfall, irrigation is up about 19% from last year. So overall, sales are tending to be about 2.4% more than last year, And we also got to keep in mind that our higher demand months are still ahead of us. Okay, this one is on revenues and expenses. Looking at revenues, the fiscal year forecast of $414 million as compared to last fiscal year of $407 million, so about 1.6% greater. O&M expenses, this fiscal year, our current forecast for O&M is about $133 million, and this is about 11% more than the last fiscal year, but less than our budgeted expenses of $136 million. And we anticipate that this will probably trend down as we go further into the year. Capital expenses, and basically what capital expenses represent is reinvesting in the system. And this includes our rehab and replacement programs to replace our age infrastructure, as well as our capital improvements for supporting growth. Last year, our expenditures were around $77 million, and our current projection is $117 million, or about 50% greater than last year. We recognize that this is an ambitious number, and we continue to monitor and update it. We anticipate that this number will probably trend down, but still be greater than last year's. Bottom line, if you look at costs per 1,000 gallons, that's the bottom right-hand box. In summing up, our O&M expenses and our CIP expenses lead to this bottom line number. We're forecasting $4.41 for water, which is about 6 cents below our current target of $4.47, which is good. And the sewer is forecasted at $7.97, which is just about at target of the $7.96. And last, rates. As we look at rates, we are, look like we're firmly in the middle of the pack there. Our rates are very stable, with a monthly bill of around $70 for residential service. And while JEA holds steady with our rates, our expectation is that others will move to the left and to the right of us. So that is the presentation, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Renetta?
Thank you.
Thank you. You did a fine job.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I will share our operations report for our customer experience. The first two slides today, I'm just going to skip through because we have no updates from the last time we made the presentation. We are expecting our Wave 3 of J.D. Power residential results to come in mid-April, so I'll look forward to updating you on that progress in our May presentation.
Monica, could you explain how those are done? Are those telephone surveys or?
They're online surveys.
Okay.
So what J.D. Power does is they do a certain number of surveys electronically, nationally. They work to hit a certain number of people by demographic, aligned with census. That's one of the things that they work towards. And they do multiple industries at the same time. So people are not just completing utility. They're completing, multiple industries at the same time, but that's how they get the utility items.
Okay.
Okay, for our ease of doing business and our various channels of how we deliver our service to our customers, as you can see from this, believe it or not, our self-service options, our IVR through the phone and our web are our two highest, with our call volume, with speaking to an agent. We continue to monitor that and the satisfaction. February numbers went down a bit because it's a shorter month, but we're continuing to monitor that. First contact resolution continues to be a goal for us. I'm glad to share that we have improved from where we were last year. We're about in line with our goal, but we continue to want to have improvements in these areas and put a great amount of focus on that. We do not have the February data in here. We did have a glitch with our vendor and our systems in getting that information over, so we'll resume that in March. Again, when we look at power quality and reliability, how effectively we are communicating with our customers when we do have an outage and an interruption is enormous to satisfaction. So we are continuing to monitor our callbacks and our notifications and are keeping customers informed when we have an outage. And We're doing better in this area from last year, but still not quite where we want to be, so still putting quite a bit of focus there. Participation, we set some very, very lofty goals for budget bill and auto pay this year. We set the goals based on where the market and the industry is recognizing that we were significantly behind. We understood that it might take us 2 years to get there, but we felt it was appropriate to set the goal and start moving in that direction. And so we're working very hard at that. I am happy to share that we were in the same boat with e-bill just 1.5 to 2 years ago. And we are now just about in line with the industry benchmark on our e-bill participation. And as I've shared in previous customer satisfaction updates, we are seeing the positive response from our customers and the bump of customer satisfaction from that option. So we have now put our focus on budget bill and auto pay. I'm happy to share that we just did a 2-month campaign on My Budget. I think it was about a 6 or 8 week time period. In that time period, we signed up what we normally would sign up in 6 months of normal signups. We did in 6 weeks, and so.
Yeah, do you have any kind of mobile app that allows JEA customers to pay their bills that way?
We do that through our website. So we do have a mobile website. We actually just had that conversation yesterday. I don't know if Paula Cosgrave is here, but we just had that conversation yesterday about responsive design, mobile website, as opposed to mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
We have made the decision to date to stay focused on a mobile website because there's less multiple sites to keep updated, but we'll continue to evaluate that. We continue to do well in our customer participation on electronic payment methods, which again have higher satisfaction and are more cost effective. So we're tracking that. Communications is, as you know, a big area of focus for us. We did put a good amount of focus in that area in February as well. Big focus on My Budget and auto pay. Also, you may have heard in the media about some of the increased effort on utility scams that are going on, so we did a lot of education and communication on that. And then, of course, our Liberty Street event, which we also gave you an update on at the last board meeting, our electric vehicles and also cold weather tips. As far as our community responsibility, volunteering continues to be a big focus. March is a really big month for us. We are kicking off and starting our Habajacks program, where we get a lot of employees participating. The Gate River Run also had good participation there, and then a cleanup occurring this weekend. And so we're really starting to see that movement with our volunteers and look forward to continuing to have that. Our employee committee is continuing to just do a remarkable job at finding those volunteer opportunities out in the community and recruiting their coworkers and peers, and we're just delighted at the increased number of employee volunteers in the community we're continuing to see. As far as our JEA Ambassador Program, this is a new, improved, enhanced program this year where we're really leveraging JEA employees and training them to go out in the community, host speakers bureaus, look at doing facility tours. We had, for the month of February, 83 year to date, we've had 83 ambassador events and have trained over 65 employees specifically for ambassador programs. And we also recently had the Home and Patio Show. Our JEA Power Pals is one of our new ambassador programs that we're really excited about. We have a lot of employees out in the schools educating elementary students on electricity safety. Again, our environmental stewardship, demand-side management, weatherization, neighborhood efficiency programs, and our electric vehicle programs, we continue a focus in that area, and all of our programs to date are on track for our goals as well. And then, as Sheila gave the presentation to you today, we are continuing to put an increased focus on our customer assistance and working with our local agencies. You saw that information already. Our pay plans and pay arrangements are on track. We do monitor those. These are, again, a very important way that we provide assistance to customers going through some unique hardships and struggles, yet we keep an eye on the financials to make sure our receivables and our write-offs are still in line with our goals and our industry targets, which all is looking good so far. Some continuous improvement efforts. I'm not sure if all of these slides are in your packet. We've added some of these, but I thought they were very timely and great things to share. Number one, outage communication. We talk about it a lot. Power quality and reliability is our number one driver to satisfaction. And we are in the midst of a project to really improve the automation and the experience of sharing information when we have an outage. Our first step was we have updated our new and improved JEA.com outage website, and so there's a before and after picture for you. We have a new outage map which will be up and coming, as well as our new text and email alerts which will be up and coming. Our goal is to have everything up and running before storm season hits, and we're really excited about those opportunities. So that is an area, and this first step has occurred. Sheila shared about Senior Day. I just think it's a great success story, and a lot of these ideas and efforts have also come from our employees who have provided the ideas as they do their work. Obviously, another big continuous improvement effort for us has been our electric vehicles. We have a RFP or a proposal out right now where we're trying to find partners in the local business community who would like to put charging stations in their place of employment with our partnership with the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization. And so we're excited about that, and that work is continuing very well. And I'm proud to report that we are getting people submitting requests in, so we're excited about that. And then finally, I thought what a better slide to end with. We talk a lot about earning customer loyalty, customer advocacy. We had a water outage, I believe it was last week, and again, just how the processes work. 5 in the morning, your business customer contacts their account executive, crews are mobilized, everyone's doing what they need to do to get people back up and running as quickly as possible. And this is what, this picture was sent to us that afternoon, that this was one of our customers. They had called in to thank us, to thank Brian and his amazing crews for their responsiveness, their account executive for being available at 5 in the morning and mobilizing and communicating. Yet this was another way that they chose to recognize and thank JEA, to share their gratitude with more than us. And someone snapped a picture and sent it to us, and we just thought it was a great story and a great way to illustrate the customer advocacy.
Monica, what is the status of the charging stations that we were putting in with the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization?
So that is the, I guess I'm gonna call it RFP for lack of a better word. There is a proposal out right now for local businesses to submit their request to participate in that, to select the 30 businesses that will.
The sites?
The 30 sites
Awesome.
where those will be, and so things are progressing forward well.
Okay.
And I will definitely keep you updated as we go through that process and as some of the first charging stations are deployed.
Any other questions for Monica?
Thank you for your report.
Thank you. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Bauer to review the agenda item 3B3, the fiscal year 2015 CEO goals.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Board members have been provided copies of the 2015 CEO goals, as well as proposed CEO evaluation process in the board package. We've discussed Paul's goals over the last few months and feel we've assembled a set of goals that are consistent with the prior years, and that the goals are primarily focused on executing JEA's strategic plan. Paul will continue to foster a cultural shift toward a more flexible and nimble organization. Specifically, Paul's performance will be measured by the organization's performance in the strategic plan's 3 areas of focus: develop an unbeatable team, earn customer loyalty, and deliver business excellence. Objectives and measurements for each of these areas of focus are included in the board package. And now I'll turn the meeting over to you to obtain a vote and any discussion.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the FY 2015 CEO goals as well as the evaluation process.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it up for any discussion that the board members would like to have with regards specifically to either the evaluation process or the goals as we've, they're proposed at this time. Are there any comments? Go ahead.
Sure. So, couple things. So, with the CEO evaluation process, so I was thinking about this. The way this is set up is we would be setting goals for the subsequent fiscal year, 30 days prior to September board meeting, which means sometime in mid-August. So about 45 days before the end of the fiscal year we'd currently be in. And having a tough time reconciling how we set goals for a subsequent year when we haven't assessed the CEO on his current fiscal year's performance. And so, as I've been thinking about how a solution that may kind of help this is, I think maybe if we just combine the two boxes here, where at the same time that we are communicating with the CEO on his current fiscal year's performance, we are also discussing the subsequent year's goals. And when we come to the board meeting in October, both are done at the same time, as opposed to a September board meeting where you're approving a set of goals for the following fiscal year and then coming back a month later and grading him on the current fiscal year.
I have no problem with that. I think, there's always the possibility that some goals aren't met and need to be, need continued work.
That's my point, is so like you wouldn't know that if you're setting one before the other.
Exactly. No, I think you have a good point.
So just for I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna agree.
Okay, so just for clarification, you're suggesting that the discussion regarding goals as well as the evaluation for the prior year the current year occur
All happen
at the
in
same
October.
time?
I think anywhere
Well-
that you see the word September, yeah.
Concurrently, so would the process begin in September? Well, yes, because it's 30 days.
30 days prior
the
to October board meeting.
board meeting.
So anywhere that you see the word September on this page, it would it would be changed to October.
Any comment, would you like to amend the
I don't
motion
think there would be any
to-
harm of having some preliminary goals discussed in September.
Oh, no, I
or
don't
some
think- yeah.
preliminary targets, and a lot of that would come from Paul, of course. But then we would have to weigh in on whether we thought there were other goals that were important to be achieved during the next fiscal year. So maybe the preliminary set of goals from Paul could be done in September, and then we could kind of finalize it concurrently with his current evaluation.
Well, and just as a reminder, the process contemplates discussions one-on-one, each of us with Paul, so there can be some, back and forth about that.
Yeah.
And then coming together.
I mean, you could say 60 days prior to the October board meeting to just give you enough time. But I think the goal is in October, you're coming and you're doing a comprehensive package. You're approving the incentive pay and at the same time setting the goals for the next fiscal year.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. Maybe just a little refinement, Paul, on some of the timing there.
Absolutely.
So we're going with the 60-day prior language.
Is everybody okay with kind of the systematic way of going about the evaluation process as outlined in the form?
I think the goals are linked together pretty well and seem to tie into the strategic objectives. So as a first round of doing it this way, I think this is a good progress on this.
Okay.
I would just have two other comments real quick. So on, these pages aren't labeled, so the one that's the goal of, would be the second long sheet. I stated this before, I still have,
Delivering business excellence?
so yeah, delivering business excellence, the last measure, the two revenue sources, the two revenue opportunities, each capable of generating at least $2 million annually. I feel like I'm working in a little bit of a vacuum here. Given the size of our organization, I still feel two revenue opportunities that are $2 million apiece is low. We've got a lot of assets at JEA that we can drive revenue off of. I am okay with letting this go this year if it was with the understanding that at our strategic retreat, we have a conversation about what some of these opportunities could be and what the real revenue opportunities are for JEA. But I just think it's artificially very low for a company our size.
And it's very nonspecific. It may be that we want to have more of an effort in the natural gas fields, say, for next year. I mean, just as an example.
Yeah, and
And that may not have a number attached to it, but it may be that we begin to commercially develop that opportunity. Could be stated differently.
Yeah, my fear is we spend a lot of human capital at JEA chasing $2 million. And so I find that $2 million revenue number just very low for the size of the company we are.
Well, the way I saw this is I figured Paul had this in his back pocket already, so.
Maybe I'm just trying to be more diplomatic and not give him an easy way to meet it wasn't lost on me that we got a natural gas handout to us the same day we're approving goals, so.
Just curious, can anybody give from a
I'm
historical
okay with
perspective?
it for this year. I really am, because we're already halfway through the year. I think trying to impose something really major, I think that's really something.
That's fine, but that's why I said, I'm fine with letting it go with the understanding that, for next year, we can't be in the same situation where we're chasing $2 million revenue opportunities where there are probably greater opportunities for us out there.
Well, I think this is gonna actually be the first year, this new year, where we are really gonna weigh in on what the goals are. I think for the most part, in the past, we've been sort of takers of what's been put out there.
And I think as a metric, this is the first time that this particular type of goal has been,
Even
measured
referred
in
to.
this
Right.
way.
Exactly.
So,
Anticipating that question and discussion coming up, can someone be prepared maybe at a later date to give us a perspective, historical perspective on what those new revenue opportunities have looked like in the past, and did they approach the $2 million? Okay, we got it in here, but what was the baseline or point of reference that it was based upon, if there is one? I know we may not have it now, but anticipating that discussion coming forward, I would like to have some historical perspective.
Madam Chair?
do that, yes.
I think we'll have a lot more clarity next year in terms of the proposed EPA clean power regulations as well. And that has the ability to suck a lot of the oxygen out of the room or give us more opportunities. And by the summer, we'll know a lot more about what those will be. So I'm comfortable leaving it at the $2 million for this year.
And then I just have two other things. So on deliver business excellence, the goal to respond to market changes affecting revenue. So they're the, the measures to implement changes to the electric system rate structure to increase the percentage of fixed revenue. Chairman Barra, I know we've had some discussions at Finance and Audit on this. There is no metric here on how much we need to increase the percentage of fixed revenue. And so when we're back here months from now and we're trying to grade this, I'm struggling with how we grade this where, if you increase it by 1%, does that mean he's met it? Or is this, as a CEO, met it? Or is there some metric that we're looking for there? Because I know we'd like to see something a lot more significant than where we are now with respect to the rate structure and the percentage of fixed income that we're covering.
Yeah, but we really didn't very well define it at the beginning of the year.
We
And,
didn't, correct.
And we are now contemplating a rate structure change in the electric system. And we're gonna have a chance to pass on that. Melissa's gonna discuss some of that here coming up. And if we accept that, and that's where we wanna go, then that's gonna kind of set a certain level automatically.
Right, and I don't actually read it the same way as you, Hussein, in the sense that we're looking, this measure is looking for a particular number. To me, it says develop and implement the rate structures. So, as an
Yeah.
organization, have we been able to, number one, develop this rate structure that's necessary to achieve the balance between fixed and variable? And number two, have we actually implemented that, communicated with our customers the reasons for that, and then achieved the implementation? So it could be, regardless of the number actually. So that ultimately it'll really come down to a conversation between the board members and Paul about each of these, and then, a
Well, yeah, I think,
determination.
in the future, we have to be specific, right? We're gonna do this at the beginning of the year.
But this was a goal that came from the
And-
board.
yeah.
We basically
But-
said, we've got to get more of
Right.
our electric base rate fixed, or a base rate, and for the various reasons we've discussed over the years, so.
I think it is actually pretty specific in that it says, as you mentioned, Helen, that it does put in place a mechanism for moving that direction and actually puts in place a policy. But I'm thinking that if you want to then make it a metric to measure year after year, it could always be, then the following year it's still there, but it's maybe a certain percentage. And that could be a very distinct measurable moving forward. And I think we could have implementation as one goal as it is, which I'm perfectly fine with that. And then down the road, it could be maybe a metric as it starts to increase over time.
Right.
And yeah, that will call for a lot of conversation, because there are a lot of,
A lot of moving parts.
yeah,
there,
absolutely,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
And then the last comment I have is, I know for commercial survey on the last page, our goal is to get into the first quartile, but for residential, we say second quartile. Is there a reason why we're not shooting for first quartile in residential?
Well, I think when we set the goal out a couple of years ago now, we're gonna phase into, remember, we were bottom of the fourth quartile, and phase this into the third quartile, second quartile, establish some stability as we went forward, and then, once we got firmly entrenched in second, then look to first. We had a very good one of 4 waves that sort of pushed us up. We want a chance for the organization to have some sustainability in terms of that second quartile.
What was the goal that we gave you last year for residential?
Second, I think.
Yeah, so,
Well, I think there's also, the quartile itself has there's a significant move from within the quartile as well. So we can look at look at the, we ended up at the top of the third, we didn't make the second. This upcoming year, again, the second to move from that, the jump to the first is a big jump. It's not to say that we can't, but we are throwing everything we've got at it in terms of the historical or legacy issues that we have going and things we have going in the community. It's a pretty significant jump. We don't compare favorably with the political environment and certainly the press coverage that we receive with the people we're competing with. That amount is very difficult to overcome.
Get to that?
Actually, when we first started and started looking at this, progress was far exceeded our expectations early on. And I guess what Paul's saying is we just want to consolidate that here. I'm very happy with
Yeah.
where we are right now. I think we really have made a tremendous amount of progress, far more quickly than we would have anticipated early on.
And I think that's accurate. I think what we can do is, and we haven't had him in recently, but maybe get the JD Power expert in, just to talk about the progress and the speed at which we've moved, which quite frankly has not been done before in the 14 years of this survey. So it's just a matter of, yeah, we want to keep the pressure on in terms of moving, but we do want to set down, and it, staying the second and upper second is still a stretch. We want it to be achievable for the organization.
And I think, to be fair, we were kind of thrown into the political debate over financing the pension deficit.
Understood,
And,
understood. But
there were a lot of concerns about JEA being used to basically collect the money for that, and potentially its impact on rates. And that had I think, some impact on perceptions.
Yeah, speaking of perceptions, one of the things I want to keep in mind, yes, this is a document we'll use as a board, Paul will use, right? But it's also a public document. So the historical context that you spoke of there should be some in the notes, footnotes, to talk about where we've come from, to set the expectation, because if this is a standalone document, you don't have access to all that background knowledge that we have to
You're
put it
right.
into context, right? And so, remember, when we first focused on it and moved from the bottom quartile to the third, I believe that was a record-setting
It was.
effort,
Yep.
right? And we only move one slot up, one quadrant, right? So, again, to talk about moving from where we are at the top of the third, up to the first, would be even more of a historical leap, right? And again, unless you have that historical context, looking at a standalone document, you can't get it from there. So,
understood,
yeah.
understood.
Right.
I like aspirational goals.
I think we got them.
Yeah.
Realistically aspirational.
Okay. Charity, with regards to the process, is that something that we need to amend the motion in order to?
What's before the board right now is what's in the package, and there's been a modification to the process, so
Right.
I would ask that someone move as amended,
Okay.
the item.
Okay,
I move as amended.
okay, and so just for
Second.
clarification, that in the CEO evaluation process, it's been amended to say 60 days prior to the October board meeting, the CEO will communicate with each board member to obtain their input on the CEO goals for the next fiscal year. And in the next sentence, the September meeting will be changed to the October meeting. And in the third sentence, September will be changed to October.
And for the chair, it looks like you only need the one box, because everything will happen at the October board meeting.
Right.
I don't know if you want to make that amendment, that page.
Right, if we just delete that September board of directors meeting box.
Madam Chair, and just for clarification for the public that's watching, so next year on this process, instead of having this discussion, halfway through the fiscal year,
Right.
this discussion will be taking place prior to the new year, right? So we won't be able to say, well, we're halfway through, let's keep what we have.
Well, at
Well,
the
it'll-
October
it'll
board meeting
Yes.
of the
Yes.
No,
of the
the
current year.
first meeting of the fiscal year. So
Yes,
that-
correct.
So so that we will have an approved set of goals for our CEO, beginning that first month of the fiscal year.
Correct, yes.
And that will be about the first time ever, so I think
Yes.
we can.
Okay, so, all in
I
favor,
heard one motion, but I didn't hear,
I seconded it.
yeah,
Yes.
all in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
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 And the amended motion passes. And, is there any new business to come before the board today? Seeing none, is there any old business? None as well. So at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Bauer for the report from the Finance and Audit Committee.
Good afternoon again. We have quite a lengthy report, so bear with me. First of all, the Finance and Audit Committee met on March 9th. Present were myself, Wyman Wimbush, Hussein Cumber, and John Hirabayashi. Did I get that halfway
You
right,
did.
John?
Yeah.
Thank you. First order of business, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes of the December 10th and the February 5th Finance and Audit Committee meetings.
So moved.
And second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Show that it passes. We had a report on the audit services. The Institute of Internal Auditors, IIA, requires that the qualifications and independence of the consulting company selected to perform the quality assessment review of an internal audit department be discussed with our Finance and Audit Committee. The benefit is that JEA Audit Services complies with IIA standards and receives an independent assessment of its policies and procedures and practices from a knowledgeable utility industry auditor. The selection of Honkamp Kruger has been made in accordance with JEA's procurement code and policies. This audit of our internal audit happens every 5 years. And this happens to be the company that did it the previous time. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the selection of Honkamp Kruger to perform the full external quality assessment review of JEA Audit Services for 2015.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call upon Melissa Dykes to offer a presentation on items 4A, 4, 5, 6, and 9A. The first one is the pricing policy changes and the adoption of regulatory accounting.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And apologies for the length of the agenda and report. The Finance and Audit Committee was presented with a recommendation to adopt regulatory accounting at the last Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Regulatory accounting is more common among utility financial reporting and better aligns our GAAP financial statements with our calculation of debt service coverage. The timing of the change is significant. With the implementation of new accounting rules this year, our unfunded pension liability will now appear on our balance sheet, and with the adoption of regulatory accounting, we will also book an offsetting regulatory asset for that liability. In connection with the adoption, JEA also shifts its rate making from a cash basis, which we currently use, to utility basis, which is based on depreciation. No change in total revenue requirements are expected as a result of this shift. The approval that's requested also includes changes to the pricing policy to consolidate the utility rate making and stabilization fund authorizations into a single policy document and clarify the board's responsibility with respect to regulatory accounting. Most of JEA's stabilization funds would become regulatory liabilities under the regulatory accounting adoption, meaning those funds have already been collected but not yet deployed for the expenses for which they were designated. Regulatory accounting-related items will be presented to the board for approval as part of the budget process or at other times as needed during the fiscal year. This item is presented to the board for approval today.
With that, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the accounting change to
So moved.
regulatory accounting.
Second.
In tandem with this approval, the board is approving changing its rate-setting methodology from cash to utility basis methodology and changes to the pricing policy. Do Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Melissa, could you give us an update on a rate restructuring initiative that we have before us?
Yes, sir. With respect to rates restructuring, the Finance and Audit Committee was also presented with an update on the restructuring initiative. As discussed as part of our strategic planning process, there is a significant mismatch between the portion of JEA's expenses, which are fixed, and the portion of revenues, which are fixed, which is significantly less. The rates initiative seeks to balance the goals of revenue stability, minimizing customer impact, and improving system utilization. This is a cross-functional team that's been assembled to analyze the potential paths forward with respect to rate restructuring. In connection with this, JEA has also conducted customer research to understand customer perceptions related to rate structure concepts, as well as what constitutes value in price for JEA customers, and that's an important input as part of the process. JEA staff is continuing to analyze options to meet these goals and hopes to present a final recommendation to the board for consideration at a future meeting.
Okay, this is a goal that we have for Paul, so,
I'm on it. I heard it.
all right. Okay. Next is our budgetary assumptions for the new fiscal year of 2016.
Staff reviewed the budget assumptions for the upcoming fiscal year with the committee. Our total budget is expected to be lower for the fourth year in a row. Sales assumptions used in crafting the budget were 12 million megawatt hours in electric and 33 million kgals for water. The water sales budget for next year is lower than was used for the budget for this year. The utility continues to face key strategic challenges and risks, including lack of sales growth, environmental compliance risks, and increased pension cost. The full budget will be presented to the board at the May meeting after review with the May Finance and Audit Committee. This report is really provided to give the board the opportunity to provide input on the assumptions that will be used to craft the budget for next year.
Thank you. Next up, we have a resolution determining the sufficiency of revenues for the St. Johns River Power Park.
Item 9A it's an administrative item. It's required under the St. Johns River Power Park bond resolution. It's a certification that there are sufficient revenues available in the next fiscal year to pay debt service for the outstanding St. Johns River Power Park bonds, and it's required to be made each year that those bonds are outstanding, and that's presented for action.
And you so certify.
Yes.
We have to approve this. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. And then we have a fuel credit recommendation, a positive piece of news for the public.
Thank you. And this is where I need this slide. Fuel expenses are a pass-through to customers, so revenues collected under our fuel rate can be used only for fuel expenses. And as Mike outlined in his report to the board, this year JEA has benefited from lower fuel costs for both natural gas and coal. Because of this benefit, staff is recommending a fuel credit in the target amount of $50 million. This will result in a credit of approximately $56 for an average residential customer. So that's $56 if you use 1,000 kilowatt hours in a month. And if approved, the credit would be provided to customers in the month of April. In connection with this credit, if it's approved, we've also outlined how it's going to be communicated to customers, and that you see in the slide that shows on the monitor behind me. It'll be communicated to customers starting immediately after the board meeting with a news release and social media communications, and then followed by billboards, bill inserts, description in the e-newsletters, and other forms of communications to let our customers know about this fuel credit that will be provided back to them if approved. This item is presented for action.
And I'd like to remind everybody, I believe this is the third year that we've provided a fuel credit, so 3 years in a row.
That's correct.
I appreciate the layout of the communications plan, so.
Yeah,
That's correct.
absolutely.
I'll,
this-
so moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Okay, next, Janice Nelson, our controller, presented to the Finance and Audit Committee that the current contract with Ernst & Young expires on June 30th, 2015. At the December meeting, we had approved the staff to proceed with negotiations to extend that contract for another year. The Finance and Audit Committee meeting reviewed the extension proposal and the terms and conditions, and recommend that the full board approve extending the contract for 1 year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. It was quite a long agenda. In addition to what we've heard so far, the Finance and Audit Committee heard a quarterly enterprise risk management audit update. No major changes were indicated. A couple things actually were downgraded in terms of risks. We got the ethics officer's quarterly report. Nothing alarming there. Plant Vogel purchase power agreement update. There's been a little bit of a delay on when that project's gonna come on board, and we got that report. We discussed natural gas sales to commercial and industrial customers. More to come on that. We got a recap of the recent JEA electric system fixed rate debt refunding, delegated transactions. We also got electric system, water and sewer system reserve fund quarterly report. Everything is in good order there. The JEA energy market risk management policy report. We have undertaken some modest hedging, somewhere in the mid to high teens in terms of demand for natural gas. We put a collar around it with an upside of around, what is it, around $4 and a downside of around $2.12 or something. So that within that region, we're kind of held harmless. And then the committee held discussions with Doris Champ, our Director of Audit Services, Mike Patillo, and Justin Treat from Ernst & Young. Nothing really alarming to report there. Our next meeting for the Finance and Audit Committee committee is scheduled for May 11th at 8 a.m. With that, Madam Chair, my report is concluded.
Thank you for your report. At this time, I'd ask for the CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple comments. One, we launched in the last 30 days a utility-wide employee satisfaction and engagement program. This was engaging about 110 or 20 individuals into teams to focus on improving customer satisfaction and engagement. There are 6 or 7 key areas that the teams will be focused on in bringing forward recommended changes to our relationship, the company's relationship with its team members. And so there's a good bit of excitement and enthusiasm there. We're working very closely with the union heads, union presidents, to make sure that we're not in the bargaining area, but we are just in terms of improving the work environment. So the folks are pretty excited there. A good bit of push or conversation has been about pension and pension reform and pension activity. Most of that brought to our employees top of mind because of the dialogue occurring really at City Council with the JEA City Council Committee on the JEA agreement, as well as the introduction of the interlocal agreement. So I have crafted and we deployed a company-wide video in terms of sharing where we stand on all these issues and how it relates to pension and to individuals' pensions. And so we're waiting for feedback there. I think we just tried to clarify the issue that there are no imminent changes. We are in the process of moving forward and evaluating, and everything that we do in the future will have to be negotiated. Speaking about City Council, we continue to have a number of meetings on several fronts with them. Just an update, we are meeting individually, and I am with Bud and Wayne and Melissa at times, talking about the interlocal and really the challenges to JEA, and those are the 4 or 5 points, our contribution and the need for that to be reduced over time, our pension, the Office of General Counsel issue, economic development, and to some extent the issues surrounding civil service. We're receiving good feedback with respect to understanding of the JEA issues when it's wrapped in the broader issue of pension and pension reform in the context of the interlocal and the city borrowing money. There's still a good bit of concern expressed by the council members, but we're trying to define the conversation just to the JEA issues at this point in time, and it's been well received in terms of the dialogue. Everyone we've met with thus far understands it, and looking forward to working with us on helping address those issues in the future. Tied to that pension, you've all read, pension got set back. We thought it might get approved at the last meeting. It may get teed up again this next council meeting next week. But really, before the interlocal and the JEA agreement moves forward, the pension package, pension reform, has to be approved first. And so we met with the administration late last week and got an update, make sure we were both in sync and aligned in terms of our direction and who we were talking to and what we were saying. So we're locked at the hip and going down the path of communicating with council. We did get a setback last week when we were notified through the administration that the True Commission did take up the overall interlocal agreement and voted unanimously against it. It's not a binding, but a sort of a directional vote of the Truth Commission. Administration, as well as ourselves, are looking to get in front of that group and explain some of the issues that they brought forth in their letter to the administration that probably could use a little more background and information. We are talking, and Bud's team is taking this up with Paul Steinberger, meeting with the council members on water quality trading credits. And JEA has excess capacity in terms of how much nitrogen we are taking out of our effluent when we return the water back to the river in its natural state. And so there's an opportunity for the city to meet its obligations that it made to the state at the same time we did back in 2008 by piggybacking with our performance, our plants. We'll produce lower nitrogen discharge. They'll benefit from it. For that, there'll be an exchange of funds. There's been a little confusion here in terms of what's been reported again. The folks that paid for that reduction in nitrogen are the 220,000 customers that are connected to the JEA system. And so they paid for it. They have a right to it. The city represents the 500,000 plus citizens, property owners, et cetera, taxpayers. It's the taxpayers now, the 500,000, the broader community, which needs to step up and meet the challenge of the city. So the transfer of funds from those folks to pay back and for the 220,000 to recover costs that they've input is what's really going on. It's not, no one's being charged twice in this endeavor. Ultimately, at the end of 8 years, what will happen, the agreement with the city is only 8 years. It'll revert back to the city, and the city will have to come up with another set of initiatives in order to keep themselves compliant with the FDEP ruling. And then finally, we started our meeting this week with 3 or 4 council members, and we'll continue on just explaining our position of selling natural gas to industrial customers. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Paul. As y'all may know, this is my first board meeting as chair, and I would like to thank my fellow board members for their support in electing me chair. And I also like to thank Paul for his support, as well as the senior management and the staff. The amount of support in just information that I've already been provided to help me in this next year has been truly amazing, and I appreciate it very much. I am aware that JEA as an organization faces many challenges ahead, but I feel that by working together, we will meet these challenges and continue to strive to earn our customers' loyalty, big and small, deliver business excellence, and develop an unbeatable team. And with that, I'd ask if there are any announcements. Hearing none, I declare this meeting adjourned.